is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
So we are aspirationally doing 2 chapters today, chapters 8 and 9.
8 and 9 are the goal. 8 is quite long, and 9 is average length. And there's good stuff in here, but again, there's a lot of Matt and Circus stuff that we have talked about and covered. So I think we can bounce through it pretty quick. We'll see how deep we go into it.
There's a lot of beautiful prose and a lot of really intense lore drops. And as such, it's either stuff that we don't need to go over in depth or stuff that we have gone over in depth ad nauseum already.
Right.
Like, it's kind of one or the other. There's not a lot in between, except for a little bit of good plot stuff with Matt and Tuon. So I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to zip through this, but check the timestamps. We'll see.
The nice thing about a new recording time is we can record a little bit later if we need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So with that, would you like to read us in?
Dragon's eggs, and our symbol is the way of the leaf. Which, I gotta say, that's kind of ironic. The dragon's eggs, which are up machines of war, and then have the symbol to be the Tuathalan, even though I know they're in the way of the leaf, basically. I know that you have the Tuathalan in this chapter, and that's the way of the leaf, but, like, basically, hey, here's dragon eggs that are going to be cannons, by the way, peace. I
had not noticed how odd that pairing was, but especially if you consider our headcanon that Luca is a former Tuathalan who left, and every time he sees them, he's a little bit like, don't look at me. I am not the forgotten son. I am not a prodigal son returning. Nope, goodbye. It really makes sense to think of him going by as a fallen tinker with these cannons getting developed, these horrific weapons of war. Meanwhile, the actual Tuathalan are going by with, what they think are, the weapons of peace of themselves, right? Just being peaceful, and that's going to protect them and all that. And, they're also going to Shan Chan and assuming that their beliefs are going to be respected. And it's like,
we'll talk about that when we get there for sure.
But I had not thought about the incongruity of having so much emphasis on the Tuathalan and the way of the leaf in the chapter where Matt is like, boom, I'm making those dreams from book 2 come real.
Yeah, the knocking down the rows of bowling pins with a cannonball.
Reaching into the sky and grabbing a firework and causing the death of thousands. Like, it's, we will get there when we get there. But yeah, nice. I hadn't noticed how emphasized that was here at the chapter start. I'm just like, it's leaves, whatever. Like, but no, you're right. That's very intentional.
Luca had the showfolk breaking camp, taking down the big canvas wall and packing everything into the wagons, while the sky was still dark the next morning. It was the clatter and banging of it, the shouting, that woke Matt, groggy and stiff, from sleeping on the floor. As much as he could sleep for the bloody dice. Those things gave a man dreams that slaughtered sleep. Luca was rushing in his shirt sleeves with a lantern, giving orders and likely impeding matters as much as speeding them. But Petra, wide enough to seem squat, though he was not all that much shorter than Matt, paused in hitching the 4-horse team to his and Clarine's wagon to explain. With the waning moon low on the horizon and half hidden by trees, a lantern on the driver's seat gave all the light they had, a flickering pool of yellow that was separated 100 times and more through the camp. Clarine was off walking the dogs, since they would be spending most of the day inside the wagon. Yesterday, the strong man shook his head and patted the nearest animal, patiently waiting for the last straps to be buckled, as if the horse had shown signs of nerves. Maybe he felt edgy himself. The night was only cool, not really cold, yet he was bundled up in a dark coat and had on a knitted cap. His wife worried about him falling sick from drafts of the cold, and took care that he would not. Well, strangers everywhere, you see, and a lot of people think they can take advantage of strangers. But if we let one man get away with it, 10 more will try. If not 100. Sometimes the local magistrate, or what passes for one, will uphold the law for us too, but only sometimes. Because we're strangers, and tomorrow or the next day we'll be gone. And anyway, everybody knows strangers are usually up to no good, so we have to stand up for ourselves, fight for what's ours if need be. Once you do that, though, it's time to move along. Same now as when there were only a few dozen of us with Luca. counting the horse handlers, though in those days we'd have been gone as soon as those soldiers left. In those days there weren't so many coins to be lost by leaving in a hurry, he said dryly, and shook his head, perhaps for Luca's greed, or perhaps for how large the show had grown before going on. Those three Sean-chan have friends, or at least companions, who won't like their own being face down. The standard bearer did it, but you can be sure they'll lay it to us, because they think they can hit at us, and they can't at her. Maybe their officers will uphold the law, or the rules, or whatever, like she did, but we can't be sure of that. What is certain sure, though, is that those fellows will cause trouble if we stay another day. No point to staying when it means fights with soldiers, and maybe people hurt so bad they can't perform, and trouble with the law one way or another. It was the longest speech Mad had ever heard from Petra, and the man cleared his throat as though embarrassed by saying so much. Well, he muttered, bending back to the harness, Luca will want to be on the road soon. You'll be seeing to your own horses. I'll stop with that, Petra.
This is an interesting bit of insight into what it means to be, traveling people rather than sedentary people, and having systematic persecution against you just for existing. Like, this is RJ being like, let me get on my soapbox and tell you about how this is sucky.
Yeah. It's rounding out the culture of the show. The idea that they really can't trust anybody because they're going to be gone the next day, so people have no compunction about robbing them, because how are they going to get justice? You can't stay around for a trial, right? Like, you cut your losses and move on. That's what they have to do.
Well, I mean, even if you get a jury of your peers, I mean, whose peers? The peers of the victims or the peers of the perpetrator? Like, justice is weird. And I mean, and RJ definitely presents it as like, well, country folk are extra untrusting and communities are insular, and maybe that doesn't have to always be true, but certainly it gives us insight into the history of this particular community because it has been true for them, right? Petra's like, this has happened. We know how this goes, but we're big enough and rich enough now that we're willing to take different risks, which is, interesting.
And then we get sort of into Matt.
And then, we have this great line from Matt. The most wonderful thing about having coin was not what you could buy, but that you could pay others to do the work.
So true.
Which, I mean, I love all my labor-saving devices so much.
Mm-hmm.
So much. My labor-saving devices are, some of my favorite possessions. And I have a lot of possessions that are my favorite. But, my dishwasher and my clothes washer, my goodness, I could not live without them.
I'm Never's favorite labor-saving device.
Someone has to do it. It is hard work the thing is, it's always about water. Chores that are hard are chores that involve water. Moving water, heating water, getting water back out of things. If you have to walk 4 miles to get your water, laundry is a whole different deal than if you have a fucking washing machine that's just hooked up to a well, right? Worlds of difference just to do laundry.
Moving wet clothes from the washer to the dryer is just the worst part of that chore.
My washer's pretty good about spinning it to lightweight levels of dry.
Mm-hmm.
It's still wet, but it's not heavy because it spins it out really hard.
Honestly, my favorite thing about the laundry at the laundromat is that the industrial washers spin it so fast that it's basically bone dry by the time you get it out.
Yeah.
Because they're so much more powerful than anything you can have at home.
But yeah, it's when you have to do those chores manually, when the power goes out, and we have to move water manually. It's just everything is about, water's so heavy, Food items are not super heavy, but the water you need to clean and cook is heavy, and then clean after. And then these labor-saving devices come along, and what do? They move the water. That's what they're doing. The machine is taking all the water motion out, and that's what makes them so labor-saving.
Dishwashers, washing machines, vacuum cleaners.
Those don't really save that much labor. They just change what the labor is. I mean, unless you get one of those little robot ones, which having bought a house that is fucking carpeted from wall to wall, I have been very tempted to get one of those little robot vacuums.
Never's sister has one, and she likes it. It's a vacuum mop combo because she has a hardwood floor, and she says it does a really good job.
Yeah, my brother has one. Some of my friends have one. I've heard great things, and I don't have a pet who could potentially create a disaster with said robot vacuum. But it's just a thing I haven't gotten around to really convincing myself to do yet.
Same. Well, we end up dropping too much stuff on the floor. I'm afraid the vacuum would just totally get bound up in the piles.
And then there's that, because the doom piles know no end.
And so the rest of this paragraph is about my favorite Forsaken.
Ah, yes.
Shell Vannon, right?
Yes, Demandreds.
Demandreds. Which, okay, I don't have much to say about this paragraph other than, like, isn't sort of the name Shell Vannon odd? Like, he's a shell character. He's like a shell around a Forsaken, right? That's what his name is. He's clearly fictional.
I love it. This is ironclad, I tell you.
You know, and this whole thing where he's just asleep, right? That's clearly the Forsaken is off doing something. He's just got like a body double faking being in the blankets all day. And they're like, oh, well, he's so good. Compulsion. No soldiers would ever let another soldier lay in bed, right? That's just, no, they'd get him up. They'd give him a hard time for sleeping, right? This is clearly compulsion at work.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Vannon and vain are like really close words, and Demandred is super vain, so it's a shell of vanity. It's a shell for vanity.
It's a vain, yeah. And of course, he makes himself the best horse thief, right?
Obviously.
He would make himself a half good horse thief.
No, he can stand to look ugly, but he has to be skilled while he does it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Ironclad theory right there.
No, RJ didn't even realize what he was doing. That's how good the compulsion was.
So, he's wandering around the camp. He's feeling that feels like training. The Aes Sedai are training the new Suldam.
So they take off down the road.
Yeah.
And he's wandering through the train kind of as they head out. And Jolene has started training the former Suldam. Well, one of the former Suldam. Sita has yet to have her egg crack, so to speak.
Right. She's still covering her eyes and being like, I don't see it.
But Bethaman is getting lessons. Jolene is not wasting any time on that at all. And Matt wishes that they would not, but that will not work. But what's more important is his courting of Tuon. This is, to me, really where the courting of Tuon, like in capital letters, is happening. Because he is thinking, like, I have to make her respect me. I have to make her love me. I love her. I love looking at her. Oh my God. Like, he is just the head over heels. Has like reached terminal velocity of spin at this point.
And I think his reasoning is also right here. Sooner or later, she would speak the words that completed the marriage ceremony. Sure as water was wet. Because he knows from prophecy that he will be married to her. And he's already done half the ceremony. So he no longer has any control. So he's like, at some point, I know, because of prophecy, she's going to say the words. So that only made it more urgent for him to find out what she was like, right? He had to make her see him as something more than toy. Yeah. Marriage to a woman with no respect for him would be like wearing a shirt of black wasp nettles day and night. Worst still, he had to make her care for him, or he would find himself forced to hide from his own wife to keep her from making him Dako Vale. And to cap it off, he had to do that all in whatever remained before he had to send her back to Abu Dar. Remember, he will marry you and let you go. Like, he's going to send her back, right? And that's just going to complete the ceremony. But yeah, he knows he has this time limit to make her see him as human, right? Which this is why I think their journey really was Matt making her see people as human, right? Starting with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wanted to see more of that.
Yeah, because you really feel the universe like leaning into the Cupid role in this chapter too, because like Matt is completely committed and Tuon reacts very positively to the horse in a way that like feels maybe a little excessive, but I'm like, I don't think so. I think it's just, can you feel the Tavir this afternoon?
Right.
Like it's just the pattern is just like, this needs to happen. We're on a time limit and Matt is leaning in. So like everything is going to work to make this the most romantic, correct encounter that we possibly can have. Even though it is our hero like just completely ignoring the slave empire thing and just being like, we'll get to that later. First, I'll make her see me as human, and then we'll cross other bridges when we get to them. And yeah, I do think at this point, RJ, it's completely valid for Matt to be falling for her and for RJ to say, we're getting to that. We're going to come back around to it. We can work in spirals on this extremely complicated plot I've set for myself. Because RJ did not play on easy mode.
No, and we even see in the next chapter, if we get to that in this episode, where he basically confronts the whole "you cannot collar these women," right? Like, and he stops her, and like that. This to me was supposed to be the setup for their interaction going forward, right? Is this tension where he's like, "No, you stop, do not collar these women." Right?
There is a line. I am a chaotic person, and you think I don't have a line, but I have a line. I'm going to let you know where the line is. So that way you can stop being an evil empire. You can start doing some good in the world. I'll be your conscience until you learn how to have one.
Mm-hmm. And we get her rationalization in this chapter as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, this is RJ setting up some really cool potential future work. And it's fun. I mean, I enjoy Matt falling in love and being not the one in power, you know? Like and in a good way. You know, with Tylan, that was not a good power dynamic. With Tuon, it's more fun because he's just like the one who falls first. So like it's cute and fun.
I would argue that not necessarily. I think she's fallen hard. I think she is really hoping for the last couple of signs so she can marry him.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're right. She's definitely like letting a sigh of relief go with each fulfilled sign. You're right. You're right. She has not admitted it, obviously, but
not to herself, certainly.
That she is holding that breath is also apparent at this point. I think that's why she reacts so positively. Is because she's like, oh shit, he is courting me. It's actually happening.
I think that's why the razor is so important.
Yeah, so that means that she has fallen for him at this point. That's why, if that's why she's responding so well.
Or at least, I think the razor is the moment in which he wins her over.
Sure, right. It's been building, but that's when it catalyzes into like, oh my god, he gets me. I actually really, really, really like this guy, and I hope that he's the one. Oh no, oh no.
And that's where Geenan's like, how did you know that was a perfect gift? And Matt's like, I got lucky.
Taviran.
Him when he's like, luck never helps me with women. Buddy.
I know, right?
Buddy.
The audacity.
Right.
Yeah, he's like, the wheel literally gave you your wife via this horse. Like, sir.
So they come to another town.
Running Crossing, which I've always hear in the audiobook as Running and Crossing. I've actually started re-listening to the audiobook in a desperate attempt to get ahead of the podcast. And yeah, I hear it as Running and Crossing, but it is literally Running Crossing, which, okay, Jordan.
I bet he just went for like a run one morning and was like, I'm just going to name it.
I know, right? It's like he was getting tired of naming places at this point.
And we know, like, he had Ogier Street, right? So,
right, yeah. He was a lazy man. This lazy man who wrote all these books for us.
Yeah, no, he definitely didn't work hard on these books at all.
Yeah, no. So yeah, they get there. There's like a whole setting up the tent and negotiating the price for the tent scene that takes like 2 pages. It's a lot of, Luca prancing around being center stage even when you don't want him to be. It's fun.
2 or 3 leagues a day, which that's further than I thought, because a league is 3.5 miles almost. And so like 2 leagues a day, that's 7 miles. 3 leagues a day, that's basically 10 miles. So I'm like, 10 miles a day for a caravan, honestly, not that bad. Not that bad at all.
No, that's actually quite reasonable.
Stop complaining, Matt.
Of course, Matt's complaining about it, but yeah, it's whatever. So next we've got a evening stop where Matt goes to talk to Aludra. And There are fireworks. Shall we say?
Literally. Oh, nice pun. Nice dad joke there. Yeah, so he basically, this is the thing we've been, waiting on forever, where she said, if you can figure out why I want bell founders, I'll let you in on how I make my powders, right? Like, if you're smart enough to figure that out, I'll let you in on the rest of the secrets. And so this is where he comes to her and says, this is what I figured out. I don't know why.
But that wasn't the riddle. Why was not part of the riddle.
No. It's what do you want bell founders for? And it's to make lofting tubes so she can loft things further.
Yeah. And thus the legend of dragons that breathe fire enters the world lexicon.
Oh, God. I got to ask you about the terminology. She chooses dragons. Obviously, she knows about the dragon reborn.
Yeah.
So is she naming the dragons after the dragon reborn? Or is it just like... And then dragon's eggs, like, is there a creature called a dragon somewhere in the legend that is a lizard that breathes fire and lays eggs? Or is this somehow named after Rand, but Rand doesn't lay fucking eggs?
So I was thinking about this. I feel like earlier in the series, we do have one of our POVs casually noticing that there are artists making depictions of the serpent creature from the dragon banner, either with wings or breathing fire, or possibly both at the same time. I am 99% sure that there are mentions of both those things earlier in the series. So it's floating around in the collective unconsciousness. But she's very much on board with the Dragon Reborn.
Right.
She is very easily convinced to go along with Matt when he says that it's the Dragon Reborn that she would get to be commissioning resources from.
No, but it's not like she names them before she finds out that they're going to be made by the Dragon Reborn. It's not like she's naming them after them or trying to curry favor or anything like that.
But she knows that the Dragon Reborn kicked the shit out of the Shan-Chan's ass back at Fall.
True.
She already has a very positive association with the dragon, R.E. the Shan-Chan, which is what's driving her to engineer this thing, is the Shan-Chan. So she might be thinking, I want this to be like being the Dragon Reborn that one time in Fall. I want to kick you in the teeth so hard you never come back. That's the best I got. The eggs thing, I figure she looked at the dragon banner and was like, these things are round and that looks like a snake, so I'm going to call them eggs. But that I feel like is really weak reasoning. It's just me making the best out of a very weird situation that RJ handed us. Best I got.
The other thing that I wanted to ask about, here he says a bronze lifting tube would require a derrick. And I was like, I don't actually know what a derrick is.
Neither do I. I assume it's a cart because context.
So I looked it up.
Okay, good.
And it's not a cart.
Damn it.
A derrick is a lifting device composed at minimum of one guide mast, as in a gin pole, which may be articulated over a load by adjusting its guys. Most derricks have at least two components, either a guide mast or a self-supporting tower, and a boom hinged at its base to provide articulation, as in a stifling derrick.
Can I have a visual aid, please?
From what I can tell, it's essentially a pole with some ropes attached to it, and if you shorten the ropes, the pole will lift. That way you can lift things up with that pole by pulling on the ropes.
Okay, I've seen depictions of this for like lifting like columns or statues or it's like a way to lift things either that are tall or heavy.
Yes. So I'm assuming what he's saying basically is in order to point this bronze tube, you're going to have something to lift it up off the ground, or else it's just going to be laying on the ground. Right. So you need some way to lift the tip of it to get some sort of arc or aiming.
Sure.
So he didn't think about the sort of rolling carts that you can have, a wench on to point it and aim it.
Right. But I mean, that is, you have to engineer some sort of solution for that, which of course
Exactly.
I never thought about because it's been so cleverly engineered at the point that I first learned about cannons that I'm like, whatever, they just point straight out. It's fine. Oh, and then Like an oil derrick?
Actually, so I did look that up. They are a slightly different kind of derrick. It is obviously the same derivation, right?
Sure,
but
sure.
An oil derrick is a slightly it's more of a standing structure, right?
Yeah.
They're related. They're similar, but a little bit different, I think.
So it's a crane, essentially?
Yes. Here, let me
Yeah, visual aids.
visual aids here. Let's go ahead and well, here's the Wikipedia article. And then yeah, I mean I guess a crane would be a crane would be kind of a type of derrick, but it's basically yeah.
Like if a pulley and a crane had a baby.
Yes.
Huh. Okay, and now there is the Wikipedia page for derrick. I will put this link in the show notes, but literally we're just looking at the Wikipedia page. Okay.
Right. The term derrick also applies to a framework supporting a drilling apparatus or an oil rig. So an oil derrick is sort of, it supports an oil rig, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
And then cannon derrick, there's a picture being posted for that.
It's just like a shelf you put the cannon up on so you can point it. Yeah.
Basically, I guess. Which works if you want to, like, say, defend a fort, right? You don't have to really have it be mobile if this is home defense. If you're in the field, it's very different what you need.
Right, but if it's like, oh, you crossed this line, we're going to shoot you with a cannon. We know where the cannon's pointed. Don't cross the line.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't need to be hidden at that point. It's fine.
No.
But okay. All right. So Matt's saying this needs a huge, like, crane-like ropes and pulleys infrastructure around it. That seems deeply impractical for battlefield usage as much as I want the big booms. So she's like, looks at him and is like, I like how you're smart.
But I've actually been planning this a lot longer than you have, so I have better ideas.
And then as she talks to him, she walks us through visually what loading and packing a cannon kind of looks like. Like if you've ever seen a movie of people like, you know, loading single shot muskets or actually loading a cannon, it's like everything she's doing is very recognizable to us, even though Matt's never seen it before. It's another one of those fun moments where you're like, she's showing him how it works. She's showing him how it works. She's showing him how it works while she's talking to him. And I really like that juxtaposition.
Yeah. Basically, a proper lofting tube will send this close to 300 paces. Paces are basically equivalent to yards, right? Mm-hmm. So 300 yards, that's an eighth of a mile, a sixth of a mile, something like that, right? Not that far.
Sure.
A lofting charge big enough to send it further will burst the tube. So she's getting this bronze tube, 2 miles. Can you imagine what being able to... I mean, that's incredibly far.
From a sixth of a mile to 24 sixths of a mile. That's a lot.
No, that's 12.
12?
12 6.
12 6?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot, right? The numerator is so much bigger than the denominator. What is happening, right? Like that scaling up is going to shock and awe everyone who encounters it. That is the one power on a whole other level.
And okay, the dragon's eggs, are they solid metal? So it seems like there's explosives inside the dragon's eggs. They're metal, hollow balls that explode like grenades and create shrapnel.
Yeah.
Is what it seems like she's implying.
Yeah, it seems to be like a hardened metal or a hardened leather case kind of thing rather than a solid ingot. Because it makes sense, right? Because you have to pack all the pretty colors into them. Like these are not meant as projectiles. These are meant as delivery systems for fireworks. So she's adapting that rather than adapting like a slingshot or something where just the projectile is all that matters.
Right. Smaller but heavier, made from iron, and there would be nothing for pretty colors, only the bursting charge. So the bursting charge has to be the charge inside of it that basically creates a grenade.
Yeah. Yeah, she's talking about launching grenades, lit grenades.
That's insane. She's
not talking about just launching cannonballs the way we think of them. She's talking about launching advanced grenades.
Yeah, she's going all out on that, isn't she?
Little bloodthirsty.
I've already drawn plans for the dragon carts. 4 horses could draw one easily, right? So, you see, I have thought long and hard about how to use my dragons, not just how to make them, right? She has been planning this for a long, long time.
And here we see the beginning of one of the greatest collaborations of a man and woman working together.
It always works better that way. She talks about how she's the guild now, right? We know the rest of the guilds have been destroyed either by Rand or the Shan.
It wasn't on purpose, I swear.
Taviran. Okay, and then she pulls out this odd box, a solid piece of wood drilled with holes. Each one held a thin stick.
Matches.
Those are just matches, right?
Yep.
Matches. Okay.
Yeah, she has like a little wood block, like for knives or whatever, but it's for matches to keep them from rubbing against each other, right? Because it used to be that matches would ignite just from rubbing against each other, and that was a problem. And when we saw her with Elena and Nynaeve, she was working on different solutions to that. And this is apparently the solution she's landed on, is drilling holes in a box of wood, like a mason bee house or something.
This is like her matchbook.
Yeah, exactly. We get a vision of Rand talking to Loyal by lamplight in a dark wood, or in a wood-paneled room. And correct me if I'm wrong, that is in a future book that interaction is happening.
I want to correct you. I feel like that's right before they get attacked in the manor, right? I think that's in the manor, right? The manor is the place with the dark paneled wooden.
Right. Oh shit, that
panels.
is this book, isn't it?
And that is this book, right? Because that's
Death Gates.
That's Death Gates.
Okay, right.
So I think we're time syncing right before Death Gates. Because remember, Loyal, he's the one who like up arms. The Trollocs are attacking.
And clear the field.
Exactly. Yeah. That big thing, right? So this is right before that happens. Is my belief with time sync.
As I said, I am trying desperately to catch back up to my own reread cycle with the audiobooks. I'm trying. Okay, right. So we are actually getting close to like, this is, because we are seeing this at the same time, and yeah, we're going to get to Death Gates in like another 10 chapters or something. So
right. Basically, by the time we, once we get through Matt's storyline and go to Rand's storyline, we're going back to the beginning of this day and syncing back up, and Rand is doing Death Gates.
I like this line from Matt. He was ready to pour out gold like water if it gave him a way to kill his enemies before they got close enough to poke holes in his hide. Because he's telling Eludra, like, I can afford this. Like, if Rand or anyone else doesn't want to afford this, I can afford this. Like, I will give you all the money because I want to be surrounded by these things. But then he tells her, okay, I got the secret for you. Only like 15 other people know it.
At this point, yeah, it's a little ridiculous. It's the open secret that everybody knows.
Yeah, it's like
that Tuon is actually.
No, this is the secret that Matt is friends with the Dragon Reborn.
Oh, that's right.
He's like, anyway, he lists all the people and the Red Arms, and I'm just like, Matt, you really think that this is like, it is an open secret? It's like Tuon. It's like, this is basically an open secret, except for Tuon doesn't know the Dragon Reborn thing, so it's not quite that open. But like, that's basically the only person left to keep it a secret from. Everyone else who matters knows. So yeah, he gets to see her use a match. She makes the sky bloom, and they shake hands. And he's like, seems like a set of dice stopped, but that can't possibly be like a fateful decision. That would be weird. And then he has a dream where he literally enacts the vision that Egwene had in book 2. He literally is doing it. I'm just like, the Taviran is so strong in this moment. The thinness between the like world of dreams and the waking world is so freaking thin right now. It's great. I love it. It bloomed again and again in his dreams that night and for many nights after, but there it bloomed among charging horsemen and massed pikes, rending flesh as he had once seen stone rent by fireworks. In his dreams, he tried to catch the things with his hands, tried to stop them, yet they rained down in unending streams on 100 battlefields. Just, There was this video game I played. It was a computer game. And at one point in the game, you got to see like a montage of world history because you were like traveling in the past and like having to solve these riddles. But then there was like a montage that included like more recent history that was the future from where your character was sitting, all the way up through like the futuristic space time that you were actually from. And this just always gives me that vibe of like just montaging through like, and then everything just escalated into greater and greater warfare. Just like he's seeing that in this dream space that's like the same space where his childhood friend Egwene saw a dream of him snatching a firework out of the sky and causing thousands upon thousands of deaths as a result of doing so. Like, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, and you can see where, like, oh yeah, the discovery of guns is such an important technological advancement, but at the same time, they are weapons of death. And the Dark One, like, even with the Dark One being locked away, guns are going to cause so... Like, when used against the Trollocs, sure. But the problem is they're not just used against the Trollocs, they're used against other people. And, you know, you have to, again, look into Robert Jordan's history and his experience as a machine gunist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
He was not operating a cannon. He was operating a machine gun from a helicopter. He was experiencing a very far-flung escalation of what he's writing here with Matt. But, like, you see a straight line.
And how much you want to bet he has those dreams?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Like, he puts a lot of himself into Matt, and so Matt is able to extrapolate forward and see that this is a double-edged sword. Because, like, and he's already thinking about using them against the Shan-Shan. He's like, the Shan-Shan and Trollocs, those are the two enemies I know I'm going to have to fight. Like, he's not coming at this with the only for monsters of the shadow, I'd never use it against people. Like, he's immediately thinking, I'm going to have to use this against people. People who use magic women as slaves, but still people.
And technology always spreads, and then they're going to be using it against you.
It's the double-edged sword of having Damani in the first place. You know, we saw that with comments made by Mishima in an earlier chapter. Like, it's really gnarly when both sides have Damani. Like,
yeah,
humanity aside, it's just having a weapon that's strong where both sides have it means much greater casualties.
When Eludra agrees to this, we get the second stopping of the dice. Right, so I think I talked about that in the last chapter, and I figured I've researched it, and I've got all four. He's got 4 sets of dice at the beginning of the previous chapter. All right. So dice number 1 stops when he buys the razor. Right, we saw that in the previous chapter. Set number 2 stops when Eludra agrees to make the cannons with him. Number 3 stops when he gives, which we'll see later in this chapter. He gives the razor to Tuon. 4th one stops when he agrees to rescue Moraine. Right.
That one I remember because it's the last one.
Uh-huh.
But okay.
When he woke up yesterday, essentially there were 4 sets of dice, and the last one is leading to him agreeing to rescue Moraine.
Wow. And they all 4 started just the other day.
Yes, just the other day.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Excellent. So next thing I've got is, well, first of all, we have a brief mention of him working on the bow that never actually goes anywhere, but I just want to track the bow stave as it turns into a bow, just because I feel like we got to milk all the meaning we can out of it, since there's apparently none, actually.
Yeah.
So he's working on it. I don't know, maybe it's like an analogy for his relationship with Tuon. Like, you know, he's working on it, he's whittling away. And then Vale and Lylewyn come out of the wagon dressed very nicely, and they go to town, and they come back, and they announce that they're married now, and he needs to move out.
and they hint, you know, the marriage happened because, you know, the change of the name made her realize she needed to start a new life and move on, and married Domon. And he's like, why won't you take my last name? And she's like, because I was given this name and I just changed it. I'm not going to, like, I literally changed my name last week. I don't want to change it again.
Right. She's like, have you seen the line at the DMV? I'm not going through that again.
There was so much paperwork. And then I have to explain to everybody why I'm changing it. No, not happening. And meanwhile, Domon's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, I thought you were smarter than that, but fine.
I mean, I think that he figures which is kind of how I'm thinking about it, is like, if you're willing to cut all ties, then why are you not willing to cut all ties? You know, like, there's just like the things she chooses to keep or leave, I find a little bit curious, but people are strange and they're allowed to be strange. It's her identity. She can do what she wants. And that's, you know, where Bale comes down on. It's like, I don't give a fuck as long as you'll marry me. So it's fine. And then they start looking at each other in just that, like, truly disgusting way that couples do. And Matt's just like, oh my God, no. And then he goes off to stare at the woman he wants to make gooey eyes at.
I have no idea what that's like.
I don't either, at all. Mm-mm.
I'm also working on a new last name, which is crazy. So it's, yeah.
Well, you are not doing the Lylewyn shipless or the Bale Doman. at all. You're not taking someone's name. You're not keeping a name that was given to you. You are striking out in a whole new direction.
Domeless. Well, yeah. So I'm doing it's a combination of our two existing last names and then changing some vowels because the vowels I don't like how the vowels fall out. So we're basically doing a Jordan to our last names. We're taking two words we like, smashing them together, and changing some vowels around to get a whole new last name.
I'm just making up a new name like it's a fantasy project.
I absolutely am.
It's
yep,
so
totally.
appropriate. I love it so much.
Because like I don't want to take her last name because like I don't want to be. It feels weird taking her dad's last name because anyway, that feels weird. And I don't want to force my last name onto her, but it also feels weird to have different last names. Hyphening doesn't work. And that leaves you with like either picking something random or trying to mash your last names together. And I want some sort of methodology behind it that I can explain.
Or at least mythology.
Yes, that would work too. But Welland's just sticking with the name that the Empress came up with on a whim, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like asking a celebrity, like, what should my name be? And they throw something out there and be like, I'm sticking with that for the rest of my life. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I find it a strange choice given everything else she's willing to give up, but whatever. People are strange.
But Matt, what do you think about Matt, like, I don't want to say dead naming her, but he does, because he does. He switches over to Llewellyn.
To her face.
He doesn't call her to her face. But in her head, he's like, I still call her Aeginan.
And he does. In his POV, he continues calling her Aeginan for a while after he says that he's respecting her to her face. And I find that very disrespectful. Like, maybe it's just, like, my autistic sense of consistency, but, like, if you're gonna respect someone, you have to respect someone. And, like, words mean things, and, like, it makes no sense to me to be wildly inconsistent in your head and externally. Like, yes, there is being polite. There is being diplomatic. There is, all kinds of ways in which we modify and edit and mask our reactions to people that are good and solid and reasonable. We don't have to be brutally honest and completely unmasked at all times. Not saying that. But to just be like, well, I'll call you that to your face and not make any effort to change how I think about you on the inside, that bothers me. That is not actually getting the point of the transition.
Well, for me, it's just like too much effort. Like, why do I have to remember two names? Just change it in my head so I only have to remember one.
Right. Like, it's totally fine to have a hard time remembering and to have it be a very slow process inside your head and to have it like it's easier on the outside than the inside. Like, that's fine. That's realistic. But it should be a process of getting rid of the old name as quickly as you reasonably can because, yeah, like, it's inefficient to not do that.
Have you ever had the experience where you had a friend and then you didn't see them for a while and they ended up in a new place and they took on a new nickname and then you meet up with them again and it turns out, or they had a different nickname with a different group of friends and those friends come and visit and all of a sudden these people are calling that person a different name than you know them by. And it's a very odd experience to have. Definitely knew someone named, I knew him as Bill, but I don't remember even what the other name that everybody else knew him as. But yeah, like I went and was visiting him and everyone was calling him like, let's say John. And they're like, oh, you know John? I'm like, you mean Bill? And they're like, yeah, I mean, that's his middle name, but we don't call him Bill. It's John. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I know John. It's hard. It's really hard to make that transition. And in a lot of ways, like, you're in that situation, I'm not necessarily making the transition because he's like, oh, no, when I go hang out, he was like, when I go hang out in that state, everyone calls me Bill. And when I hang out in that state, everyone calls me John. You're just from that state. So it's like, okay, so that's weird. But it's almost like having a pen name.
Sure.
You can have both names.
Sure.
What's another example? I work with a lot of people who have names where in the professional world, they find it's easier to take on a different name than try and get someone to pronounce their actual name. And so they have both names, and you're aware of both names, right? And like they're willing to answer to both names. But in a lot of cases, especially when you're interacting with a lot of people just once or twice, it's easier just to have a name that's easier to pronounce and easier to convey rather than trying to explain it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not impressed with Matt's commitment, is how I feel about that.
Fair enough. But here's my only counter argument is he feels that the name is ridiculous and unfair, and Tuon, forced it on her. It wasn't her choice. It was given to her in a dishonorable way in order to shame her. And maybe it's not like, it's like, yeah, I know you want to be called that, but I don't think you should want to be called that.
Yeah, but at this point, he's just stubbornly refusing to change while everyone else is getting with the program. Like, she's made it very, very clear, and she continues to make it clear. Like, no, I've decided that this is my name now. Like, it was a good argument, Matt, but like at this point, you need to respect her and listen to her. Like, yeah, it's weird. I disagree too, but like, you gotta commit to the bit because she has. And if she changes back, you know what you'll do? You change back. It won't break your brain to change back if she changes her mind. Like, that option remains open.
So Matt, obviously, since Eginin and Duman are now officially married, right? He doesn't want to live with them anymore.
Oh my God, the awkward third wheeling. Oof.
Right?
No. He's out.
And the whole, like, he was supposed to be, run away to be with Eginin. I'm glad that's all fucking finally just over,
such a
right?
nonsense alibi.
Yeah. So he buys a tent from two of the brothers who go just crash on somebody else's couch, but they make him pay a shit ton of money.
They fucking take him for
the
all
tent.
he's worth, and
Absolutely.
as they should.
As they should. They're like, no, we know you're rich now. You're gonna pay out the ass.
And he is like driving this caravan in so many ways, constantly asking Luca to go faster and do this and do that, and just getting all up in the way like a rich kid backseat driving their entire freaking communal career. It's very silly. I'm so glad that they took him to the bank and just cleaned him out. But yeah, he's now got a tent for his multiple chests of clothes. Multiple chests of clothes from a man who mocks
Clothes
rich
horse.
people for all of their clothes.
Ran for having a fancy dress.
Yeah, ran for having
jacket.
a fancy jacket. And he's like, oh yeah, no, and there's room for my chests of clothes. I'm like, chests plural? Sir, just look at yourself. But yeah, he's comfortable. He's got a nice little tent, and now his adopted family can gather in the tent, and he has easy access to his girlfriend, and it's just a very like sweet little domestic situation that he gets going that just lasts. Like, this tent is like where he is for a very long time. Even after they leave the caravan, this tent goes with them, I think, and it's just like you see a lot of the inside of scenes shot interior of this tent as Matt with this group persists really until he goes to the Tower of Genji. Like, a lot of scenes happen in here. All the playing
Isn't this where Oliver plays snakes and foxes while Matt's off doing the rescue?
Yep.
We get a little bit of Lopen and Narum, the body servants, right? Those are Talmanis' body servant, and they kind of share duties between Talmanis and Matt. Yep.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Yeah, well, the one's from Talmanis and the other one's from Nelisian, who's dead. And Matt adopted him.
So, reading Stormlight Archive, Lopen is kind of a pretty significant and very distinctive character. The one-armed Hardasian who makes a lot of puns and jokes about only having one arm. So it's very hard to read this Lopen without thinking of that character. and him being in that situation, and just, it's such a comedic scene in my head to put Lopen from Stormlight Archive into this scene as Matt's body servant. And just, for those of you who've read both, just that's what's in my head every time I see Lopen's name now.
That's funny. But yeah, a description of them and how their dynamic goes, and then a description of Noel and Oliver and Tom and Julian and Amathera coming by and what they're doing and what the dynamics are. And you just get the feeling that Matt has, an open door living room for the whole community, like, kind of policy for this strange adopted family that's coalesced. He does not like seeing how Amathera behaves towards Shanshang because, Tuon keeps threatening to make him dock a veil. And he's like, she was only in captivity for a few months and she acts really messed up. This makes me uncomfortable. As it should. As it should. You should definitely work on getting her to commit to not doing that to you before you, marry her, maybe.
Right. I love that he has, stop bringing me news of the Dragon Reborn. I keep seeing him banging his girlfriend. Every time you talk to me, they keep fucking. It's so much. Stop.
So funny.
Jeez.
So funny.
Rand and Min were carrying on something awful. This is how he puts it.
And
well, basically,
this is why Min's dump truck ass is saving the world. This is that happening right now because Rand is depressed and having a lot of problems, but apparently Min is able to still get a rise out of him. So it's not too bad yet. We haven't hit full Darth Rand because there is still fucking.
Because remember, my theory is that only Rand can destroy the world. The Dark One can't do it. So therefore, Veins of Gold is the reason the world isn't destroyed. The reason he doesn't destroy the world in Veins of Gold is because he realizes he can love again. And the reason he can love again is because of Min's dump truck ass. So therefore...
this is the homework
the Dark
for
One's
that.
Plan is foiled.
Yeah. This is it is one interpretation. Not necessarily endorsed by all members of this here media company.
But really by none of them. It's
But it's an interesting insight because we don't, because of the way Robert Jordan writes, we don't get a lot of scenes of Rand and Min flirting to the point of fading to black even. But Matt is giving us an insight that, oh no, that relationship is flourishing. At least in the bedroom.
Yes.
We also get some interesting thoughts about how the rumors of Rand are that he has vanished, and this is really concerning everyone. And Matt's kind of surprised that people who have no ability to be affected or to affect the situation are so worried. He's kind of perplexed by that phenomena.
Well, I mean, just imagine if you were oh, Jesus came back and you realized he was actually wandering around and you had proof that, that was him. And by the way, the apocalypse is coming, and then he disappears. And you're like, wasn't he supposed to save us before that happened? Fuck. I understand where from a normal person, they're I understand the prophecies well enough to understand he needs to do something, right? Or else we're fucked. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The Jesus analogy was bad, but you get the point, right? Was one of us.
I find Matt's surprise at that dynamic less believable after a lifetime of being enmeshed in social media. Well, not a lifetime, but after an adult lifetime of being enmeshed in social media completely. I just feel like the sense of being actively concerned about things that are far away from you is obviously you're super concerned about random people's shit going on far away from you. Granted, we don't have literal Jesus and the literal apocalypse, but at this point I'm invested in where the fucking princess is just because no one on the internet will shut up about it, I'm just you worry about things you have no ability to affect from far away, that's, but Robert Jordan was writing this very much in a headspace of not being perpetually plugged into social media and news and all of that.
Well, I mean, yes, but all he wants to talk about is how rumors and information changes over time and distance. That was the central theme of his books.
Right, but because of the internet, there is no time or distance. Everything is all happening at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. All of the time.
In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. Because information still is colored by the way it's shared and how long. And, how often is a video shared and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's no, this happened 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. There's some, I do feel like there's it's traveling in a different way over time and distance, but still information is traveling over time and distance. And the way that story is told to us changes the information.
Sure. It's very escalated in fractally kind of ways now from what he was writing.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, no, I mean, you're right. You're right. It's just a less predictable timeline now.
We have a lot more information, but it's a lot harder to tell what's true and what's not.
It's so harder to tell what's important to even try to pay attention to and what's not. Even if you're positive that you know you have good news sources, there's still too much to pick from.
I do like that even Tom and Julian seem uncertain about the colors. This means he's sitting down and telling them about his visions and the colors. And I love that Matt is bringing Tom, like, still into his confidence. He's not this isolated... Rand is this isolated ruler who really doesn't tell he makes these plans in secret and doesn't tell anybody. Matt's like, all right, General, sit around. This is what I know. Let's talk about it. Like, let's make these plans. Let's figure out, hey, I'm having these weird visions. Do you guys know what's going on there? Right? Like, Matt is a much more willing to take advice and use the wisdom of the people around him, I think, that Rand ever was.
More than Perrin ever was. Perrin is terrified of how people will react to his wolfiness, whereas Matt, once he lets someone in, like, he lets them in. Even with Fael, Perrin is still reserved, whereas Matt, like, once he decides that Tom and Julian get to know, like, they get to know.
Yeah, I think the only thing Perrin's really good at is being like, well, what do you think you should do?
Yeah, and then everyone's like, gulp. I'm sorry, sir, to have bothered you, sir. We'll be going about our way, sir.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Okay, good. Then go do that. That's like how he rules.
So yeah, Matt is courting Tuon and learning about their ridiculous superstitions. We get more of Robert Jordan not knowing how tailoring works, because apparently Tuon knows well enough how her clothes are made to describe it to the seamstresses, who then immediately turn out fitted, correct versions of what she was asking for.
Hey, she knows her measurements. That's all I'm saying.
Not how tailoring and patterning works.
I need to get my suit tailored.
Yeah, it's just a lot more complicated than he's leading us to believe. And again, he's like, oh yeah, outfits are coming out every day, and it's like no, fitted coats are not getting turned out overnight after a day of travel. That's not how seamstressing works at all.
I love how your disgust at this paragraph is the seamstressing, and my disgust is at the prophecies.
Well, I figured you had the prophecies covered, so I could focus on the seamstressing stuff.
But yeah, this is one of those moments where it's just like, oh my god, you are moving the goalposts after making the prediction when the prediction doesn't come true, right? Because the prediction is there's going to be a storm. Storm doesn't happen, you just get a little bit of drizzly rain. Oh, well, that's almost a storm. And we just didn't quite count the ants right. We would have, otherwise, no, we totally would have predicted this weather. We're fallible people. We're having trouble predicting how things are interacting. Interactions create chaos, and it's just like, no, it's dumb superstition. I'm sorry. You took Doomseer's visions and tried to convert those into shit you see around you, and it doesn't work, and it's not real because you're not a Doomseer. You're not Min.
Right.
So stop it.
Right. Yeah. The moving goalpost is like, nope, I'm out. If you need moving goalposts to make your belief system work, I'm out. Like, not to say that science isn't a self-correcting mechanism that does have to move its own, like, known... It's not goalposts so much as, like, mile markers. Like, we do get to move those, but, like, yeah, this is silly.
But a lot of times science says, beyond this point, we don't know.
Right, and then, like, PhDs hurl themselves at it to try to push that line out like a centimeter.
Right, and that's something that, like... I think people have trouble with when scientists be like, oh, I don't know. They're like, well, but you're a scientist. And it's like, exactly. I don't know.
There is a limit. And people lose sleep. They lose their years off their life trying to figure out how to push those bounds just a little bit farther out. But like,
and a lot of religious people use that to say, well, that's where God is. The God of the gaps, right? Is in the space where our knowledge fails. And it's like, well, no, it's not failing because there's God. It's failing because we haven't figured it out.
Yeah, that's a form of moving goalposts. The God of the gaps is a form of moving goalposts. Where it's like, I don't know, if the only place God has left to inhabit is quantum mechanics, I don't know. It seems like not the God I was being sold.
And the Big Bang. Big Bang,
okay, all
right? God started
the
that.
Biggest and the smallest. You're right.
Yep, right. That's because it's always what it is. It's the biggest and the smallest. Those are and the oldest, and the places we can't see.
Well, as that one comic in the book Science Summed Up Beyond the Point of Usefulness, it sums up sciences. You know, we figured out everything except for the big stuff, the small stuff, the hot stuff, the cold stuff, the old stuff, and the new stuff, or something like that. We figured it all out. A couple of caveats.
We figured it all out except something borrowed, something new, something used, and something blue. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, no, I love the unknown edges of what we know because we've been pushing those edges back for centuries, and it's constantly a fascinating journey. Like every time we pull something back, it's really cool. So like, this is fine.
We also realized how much bigger that sphere is that we're pushing against of ignorance.
Oh god, it's so exciting. It's so trippy. It's so cool. All right, so we're playing Stones, and Tuon is very skillfully getting information out of Matt, and you see how skillful she is at it, because Matt doesn't even notice that Solutia is, like, serving him wine. It doesn't even register to him that the bodyguard is, like, serving him wine, but, like, Tuon is reeling him in like a fish on a lure.
I missed that as much as he did.
Yeah, no, it totally stood out to me. Like, Solucia's always hissing at him and getting in his way, but during the games of Stones, she's happy to just meekly refill his wine cup when Tuon is asking him questions and he's actually answering. Like, I see you. I see how you're not exactly cock blocking in the way that you think she is.
Yeah, she just wants Tuon to have the upper hand.
Yeah, so they're talking about stuff like the Horn of Valir. He gets clued into how important that is to them.
Oh, yeah, I love this. Well, we need to find out who blew that Horn of Valir at Falma. That would be super important, securing that person, if we knew who it was. As Matt's being there, that's me.
Right? And then she's like, you started playing really poorly at the end of that game. Let me think about it. And he's like, so I'm going to go to bed. Like, right, I'm going to head out.
Yeah, before you figure out what we're talking about. I
don't think that leaving is going to make her stop thinking about it. I'm pretty sure that cat is crawling out of that bag.
Isn't there a scene at some point when someone calls him Horn Sounder or something around him, or says you horn, or he says I blew the horn of Bloody Valir, and she's like, what? You? Isn't there a scene like that? I'm trying to remember where she like finds out that he blew the horn. That
rings a bell, but I don't recall specifically because it's in the last three.
Does it ring a bell or does it blow a horn?
Touche. So yeah, we then next morning decide to give Tuon the razor, and it's a very fun little scene where she's super excited and committed and trusting, and Solutia is on edge. Like, oh no, he said, surprise, this is when it all comes crashing down. I knew that she was just a teenager falling in love. Silly girl, like that's what she's thinking. And then Matt actually brings out the razor, and it's exactly what Tuon thought it was going to be, all fine and dandy. And
right.
Yeah.
There was no doubt this time. He had said the horse was hers, and suddenly the dice were not beating so loudly in his head. It was not that they had slowed. He was sure of that. There had been more than one set rattling away. One had stopped when he made his agreement with Ludra, and another when he told Tuon the horse was hers. And like I said, if you remember in the last chapter, I think there was another one when he bought the horse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there'll be one more for when he agrees to rescue Moraine.
And with that, the episode's over because Seth is going to jail for that last pun. Zool said so. So Solutia sees this horse and does all the calculus, and I think is reassessing Matt. Tuon's reacting really well to this. He got her a really good gift. She doesn't create any obstacles really on this trip. Like, she gets in their way a little bit, but like she doesn't create a stink about the horse that she gets given. Like, she is changing her stance on Matt, not because she likes him, but because she's seeing how Tuon is responding to him and taking her cue from Tuon.
And how clever he's being, right? Like,
yeah.
She saw that he gave the gifts, and then he didn't give gifts for 4 days, and Tuon got a little sad. She wasn't getting any gifts. And then he came out with the big one, right? Like, to really do the contrast and make her delighted. It's like, oh, I was saving this one up for you. And, and he hid the razor for 4 days among the other horses, right? Which is pretty impressive that nobody discovered it.
Yeah.
But there is this, the yellow-haired woman was a formidable chaperone, and by the sidelong glances she gave him, her small smiles, she very much enjoyed the job of frustrating him.
Oh, yeah.
So there is that, like, oh yeah, she loves getting between the two of them and making it harder for him to seduce Tuon.
Right. But then also when Tuon takes off and goes running away, Tuon is very aware of the fact that her horse is going to outpace Solucia's. And if Matt's can keep up, then they're going to earn themselves a few minutes of private time away from her. And Solucia lets it happen. You know, like Matt even comments on it like, oh, it's kind of hopeful that she caught up a little bit slowly. So, you know, we're seeing a lot of unspoken communication happening here. So yeah, they're just cruising along on like a nice horseback ride, and then Tuon takes off and rides like a madwoman, and Matt has to ride like a madman after her. And it's really her testing out the horse and also him. His eye for horse flesh, his commitment to her, the style of what reaction he has. Because if she stopped and he was like, how dare you try to run away? That's very different than how dare you try to break your neck, right? Like how he reacts to her running away is, I think in her mind, a lot of, it's a test he has to pass.
I also think there's a little bit of, hey, if you and I have the best horses, Solucia doesn't. I think Tuon is getting away from Solucia and having Matt there and being like, I want to be away from our chaperone for a minute. Come follow me.
Yeah.
Come chase.
Yeah. And Solucia's like, oh, that girl. All right. There she goes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I completely think this is Tuon saying, you know what? I'm interested enough in you. I want to actually have some unchaperoned conversation time.
Mm-hmm. And I name her Icon. That means swallow.
Just like Fael's old horse. That's how you know she's a keeper. She names her horse Swallow. Min should name a horse Swallow just to complete the trifecta.
Does Elaine name a horse Spitz? I don't know. Like, what's the...
I wasn't going to make those jokes. I wasn't going to do it.
Just saying, like...
I know.
God. Come on, Jordan.
I know.
And also, like, do we ever call the horse Icon? No, we always call it the Razor.
Yeah, it's the Razor. It's Tuon's horse. It's whatever.
That would actually be really good trivia. What is Tuon's horse's name? What is the Razor's name?
What's the actual name of the horse, of the Razor?
What does Tuon name her Razor?
Yeah, what does Tuon name her Razor would be that would be a really good trivia question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a 1% of the audience even has a chance of getting it right kind of question.
I assume by swallow, what they're trying to do is basically say a bird in flight, she runs swift.
Yeah.
And
it's definitely swallow the bird in both cases.
Right.
Like it is not, anything other than, swift like a bird, swooping steps. I mean, swallows fly very gracefully. They hunt mosquitoes, so they go in these really sharp, half moon kind of shapes. I love watching them fly. They're very acrobatic. And then they talk about this place that they're in, these old ruins, and Matt has a really fun flashback to a series of memories from the eelfin, and then that gets him thinking about how do the eelfin get memories of dying? Because corpses are not known for hiking to the Tower of Genji to deposit their final memories.
Because I feel like up to this point, he was like, oh, I was there, they ruffled through my head, they got some of my memories, and then I left. And they have the memories they got out of my head, but that's all they get. And then he's like, wait a minute. If I remember people dying, they must be able to somehow either see the future or see what's currently going on in your life at all times.
Yeah. I personally favor the idea that they're able to download your life after you die, which is not an option he thinks about. That's kind of how I like to think of it, is that they get a download of all your files once you're done making them.
Kind of the way the Dark One grabs it after you die, right? The Dark One grabs your soul and then stick it back in your body, right? He has that moment, and you're saying the eelfin in that moment can also download all those memories.
Yeah. I don't really favor them having a live feed from his eyes into some central control tower at all times. I don't think that that's how it works, even though that's how he thinks it works. I think he's wrong. I think he's overestimating their powers of observation or surveillance, I should say.
Yeah, I think it has more to do with them reading the pattern, the way they look over his head, the way Min does, right? The way they I think that basically it has more to do with reading his thread.
Chat's agreeing with you. Reading the future and the past is equal.
Yeah. And so it's not necessarily that they're actively watching through his eyes, but they've read his thread and they know everything that he's going to do.
Right. So it's it doesn't matter what you decide to do. They've already seen whatever you're going to decide to do. So it doesn't matter. You can't evade them because they already saw it.
And, maybe there's some potential. Maybe, like, they have gaps, right? Min doesn't have absolutely knowledge of everything, right? And so then I wonder, like, how much of do they have his memories and how much are they just, like, splicing in chunks of the thread? They're like, when they filled the holes in his head, they basically filled them with chunks from people's thread that I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think it's a much less precise process than he thinks it is. He thinks that there's like a particular Agent Smith that's hunting down his particular self or whatever, and it's like, nah, it's looser than that. They're playing faster and looser and with less granular detail than you are, I think. Because they are surprised when he goes to get her. They are unable to keep him from escaping with Moraine. Like, they don't know everything, even though they know everything, because like that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? That's the difference between just having the data and having it contextualized and synthesized and processed into a usable format. Like, having information is only half the battle. You have to interpret it also. And I suspect that the eelfin have a big data problem. They have way more data than they know how to process.
And no computers.
No, they just have their ideas about who's interesting and what time periods are interesting and what might be of use, but they're going to get caught flat-footed sometimes. And also, there's probably the interdimensional nature of just looking at our world from their world. It's not going to look quite right. So he's thinking about that and looking weirder and weirder, and Tuon's like, oh, by the way, I'm an herbalist. I could, like, fix you up if you need some, like, willow bark tea or something. And I find that annoying that she's just like, oh yeah, no, as a princess I have knowledge of herbs. I'm like, why do all princesses have to have a dabbling interest in alchemy or herb craft? Like, stop. I just want one princess who doesn't care about that.
Because they're well educated, and part of the education at that time is a basic, like, knowledge of herbs. I do think that it's basically part of the education system.
That's fair.
Which is like, math 101 for them is like medicinal herbs.
Well, especially because they don't have magic healing. They don't do power healing. So I suppose field medicine makes sense for a princess expected to be her own last line of defense.
What do you think? Do you have anything to say about sort of the history, the fact that the city was called Lundaran Kor, the capital of Aeron?
No, it's prose. If you like RJ's prose, go read it. It's just the fun multi-age world building he's got going, but I didn't have anything to say about it.
Okay. And then it became Shiota.
Right, which will be relevant next week, or the chapter after the one that we're going to do next. A village in Shiota is the title of the chapter, and that's the village that sinks into the ground and takes the peddler with it. Like, so there's that, but like, it's not really particularly relevant.
Well, I feel like that's a good connection to be like, oh yeah, this is he knows this village is a place in Shiota, right? And he has those memories. So when he sees that village sink into the ground, he's like, oh yeah, that looks like a Shiota village.
Oh yeah, I guess they are kind of top of mind because of this encounter. Okay, yeah. So that there's one interesting thing to say about it. It allows him to identify the ghost town that eats the peddler.
Yeah, I like that connection. He talks about how they never come to this side of the twisted doorframe ter'angreal for longer than minutes at a time. Now, he's assuming they came across because they hung him, right?
Yeah.
And I always wonder, like, how do they affect things in the real world? Do they have magic powers that did they magically make him appear in the real world already hung? Because I don't think they can appear in our world. I don't think they can cross the ter'angreal. Or else they would have come after Matt when they left the tower of Genji. Although I guess they didn't have a doorway.
Yeah, the doorway closes up pretty quickly when they leave through the tower. I figured that they could come through the redstone doorways, but like reality starts to unmake them or something, so they only have like a few minutes, or they have to like hold their breath because they can't breathe like real world air or something like that, but like only at the redstone doorways because they like, I don't know, extend like a TARDIS bubble of like pressure and heat for them. Like, I don't know, something. I like to imagine them wearing like silly little spaceman helmets or something, like as they go out to hang that, because like they literally can't breathe the air.
But like, if you're making wishes, they clearly have to be able to affect the real world to make those wishes come true.
Yeah, they have some ability to affect the material world, but it follows very short-lived rules. They're kind of like like rare particles and particle colliders, right? They just exist for a few moments and then they like vanish. But in this case, it's like actual human scale moments rather than like quantum scale moments. So the Tinker Wagon encounter, right?
Yeah. The Tinkers follow Matt when he follows Tuon because they're worried that he's harassing women, which, yay.
Yeah, it's cool that they throw their entire community in danger to see if maybe they can save some random woman from a man who could slaughter them all. It's brave of them.
Yep. I mean, but that's what the Tinkers do, right? That's
what they do.
their whole purpose is.
But it's not a very consequential encounter. It just gives us some nice Tuatha on world building and lets us dig into an interesting concept, which is there is safety with the Shan-Chan for the people, the traveling people.
Word is spreading among the people. There is safety where the Shan-Chan rule and equal justice for all. And yeah, I mean, they have a very specific set of laws that are basically like heavily and fairly enforced. And as long as you don't have any channelers, it is a place of safety. No one's going to steal from the Tinkers because the Tinkers are going to report that and the Shan-Chan are going to enforce penalties. Whereas I feel like in other places, if someone steals from the Tinkers, they'd just laugh at them if it was reported.
Well, as we were talking about at the top of the chapter with Petra, like, the law is very inconsistently applied to traveling strangers. The more so for Tinkers, but, like, it's true of all of them. And the Shan-Chan are rumored to not be like that, to actually have even justice.
Even justice. And we saw that at the Tinkers. Basically, the guy was trying to get in, and his banner guard came along and punished him for it, right? That was justice. Yeah. On someone who was violating the law of the Shan-Chan, and that's sort of the fairness.
We saw it in Budar too. We saw instances of heads on spikes that were, some of them were Shan-Chan, some of them were local. It's definitely true, but two major questions arise. First of all, at what cost are channelers? First of all, are you okay being in a slave empire built on that slave power, and are you okay? You're just going to go to Tor Valon if you have a daughter that can channel? Okay, great. But also, secondarily, like, are they going to respect your culture? Are they going to respect you being nonviolent? Do they have conscientious observers? Or are they going to draft your sons into the military because they're here for assimilation, not for integration? Even if you're okay with the slave empire thing, even if the entire system of Dakuveil doesn't bother you, are you going to be allowed to stay pacifists? Because I could see the Shan-Chan being like, that's silly. We want those bodies in the ranks. Or do they do conscientious objections and like let them participate some other way?
It seems like the rumor is spreading that they are not yet recruiting these people. They're letting them exist inside the Empire. Right now, so far, mostly they've just recruited people, mostly from, like, Tenchiko, right? Or from, Terabon.
Yeah, Tomon Head and Terabon.
Yeah. I know they have people from every country supporting them, but I wonder how much of that is just, they mostly seem to be recruiting volunteers.
Well, I don't think they're recruiting volunteers so much as taking military units that already existed and giving them a new commander.
Right.
This would be different, right? Like recruiting people who are not soldiers is definitely different. We haven't seen them doing that yet, but I mean, big ol' Yet there. That Yet's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Like if there's a protracted war with Andor, like say in Avienda's vision, right? Are they going to leave the traveling people out of the draft? When the war gets to its 25th year and they're starting to run a little low on recruits from home, like there's just so much that they're risking by going into that layer and making that
for short-term safety.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Pacifists in empires tend to meet grisly ends or become not pacifists.
Fair. Which is also kind of a grisly end.
Yeah, for sure. But and then there's just the whole like, oh well, we'll just leave and go to Tar Valon, and it's like they're gonna attack Tar Valon. Like you don't have to know that that's their current plan to anticipate that they're gonna attack Tar Valon eventually. Like that's not a solid plan. You think they're just gonna let you go You think they're not going to call you traitor and sell you into slavery for daring to steal what should be property of the Empress? Like, come on.
Any idea why so few Tinkers start channeling?
I'm guessing that Robert Jordan... Well, we know that Robert Jordan likes to associate strength of will and personality with strength in the power. And we know that he thinks pacifism is a little bit silly. So my inclination is to think that he thought all of the weak-willed non-channelers were the ones who decided to stay pacifistic, and it was the noble Aiel who understood the value of violence that were more likely to carry the strength of will channeling gene. And it just sort of self-selected out that people who are channelers can't live within the bounds of being a tinker. I don't like it, but I think that's the best explanation I've got.
I would go closer to the Tinkers are more mixed blood, and he says, like, oh, channeling is inherited, right? So the more you mix up the blood, less likely you are to have channelers.
But channelers exist in the entire population. The Aiel don't have a particularly high percentage of them in their population. Like, it'd have to be, like, much bigger in order for that argument to hold water.
Well, and one of the things is the original Aiel had 0 channelers in their population.
And then there's that, yeah.
By definition, right? Because they were the people who served the channelers, right? So by definition, the original Aiel had nothing, right? So I think that's one explanation for why you have maybe a lot, but weaker channelers in the Aiel population.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't...
And maybe that got passed down to the Tinkers, right? That you had this group of people who weren't channelers at all, and maybe that strain is the part that ended up... But then the Tinkers are basically have all sorts of mixed genetics because they travel and pick up people from everywhere. So they're hardly the original strain of Aiel by any means.
Yeah, no, for sure. They're a ship of Theseus in terms of being an ethnic group. It's like everyone's been replaced at this point, but the culture persists. So yeah, I don't really know why. Maybe it's just that the Tinkers are such a small percentage of the population that they just, pulled a statistical low point in the human bell curve of having, because it's only like 2 to 3% of the population, and the Tuatha'an are not a huge percentage of the total population. So like, their 2 to 3% slice of that pie wedge might be like 2.
Mm-hmm. What do you think Tuon tells the women that gets them cackling?
I'm playing hard to get.
Yeah, Mary Chase.
Yeah, we're having a Mary Chase with my, wink wink, not boyfriend. I assume she says something to that effect of like, oh, I'm just putting him through his paces, or seeing how much he wants to chase me, or, something very wink nudge about the flirting that's going on.
And that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah.
And I feel like and the next chapter again is just sort of a continuation of like Matt's life in the circus for a while. So we're just going to keep going on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. We move from the troublemakers of his romantic life to the troublemakers of his magic life, I guess, which then unfortunately intersects with his romantic life again. Matt and the women. Sigh, sigh, sigh.
It's a dirty triangle. It's not fun for him.
No.
I mean, it's basically, it's a little bit of all the women in my life make trouble for me, right? There's a little bit of that, which I kind of roll my eyes at. But at the same time, he is just like, these are the people he's dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. So this chapter is called A Short Path because it's going to be a short path for us to get to the end.
Yeah, so what does that mean, even?
I have no idea. None. 0.
Okay, here's the sentence. For his part, he groaned under his breath. Jolene was no Grey, as deft as a skilled juggler in negotiations, that was for sure, but neither was he, and he still figured she had found a short path to putting Tuon's back up.
Okay. Maybe this is another one where Harriet was like, we have to put a chapter break.
A chapter,
and
yeah.
It was the end of the day, and they really didn't feel like doing it, so like they just slapped any old thing in there.
I think it's a short path to putting Tuon's back up, and putting Tuon's back up is what leads to the Aes Sedai getting collared and the drama at the end of the chapter.
Sure. All right.
Best I got.
All right, that works.
Yeah.
Matt is talking with Lyle Wynn and Bale about Tuon, and how he wants to marry her, and kind of just trying to get like any information he can about her and her upbringing. So we get a nice fat lore drop that's shrouded as rumor from Lyle about, the Crystal Throne and the Court of the Nine Moons and da-da-da-da-da. So that's fun. But again, we've been referencing stuff like from here for a long time. So we don't need to go over it in great detail, I don't think.
No. He says Egyanin. She corrects him sort of in this first beginning paragraph. We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
More
Her
of
and
that.
Domon both addressed him in this like ship's captain voice, which is just like, they're such a matched pair.
Right.
Like the two ship captains. It's like, you guys are cute.
Matt admits that he wants to marry Tuon to everybody for the first time.
Yeah, he says it out loud.
Never's sister finally said "I love you" to her boyfriend the other day of 6 months, and he's like, "Well, yeah, duh, I love you too."
Aw.
And it's that sort of the same sort of feeling of like, no shit, Sherlock, we all knew that. We were just waiting for you to say it.
Matt has this fun line about Tuon that she is as bad and dangerous as a warder and an Aes Sedai wrapped into one.
Mm-hmm.
If only she learned how to use her channeling abilities, she would be unstoppable.
Oh yeah, with the physical abilities that she's learned as a fighter, combined with, her Lopar, right?
Yeah.
And then channeling. She's a badass. She's a powerful. Again, Jordan loves to take these very powerful women and put them in very small packages.
Oh my god, she's so tiny, and just like, what can't she do? Learn how to channel, because she's got a stupid mental block around it. That's it.
I was gonna say have empathy, but
that too. But he was leaving room for her to learn empathy later, so I wasn't counting that.
Yeah, when we get some of her backstory, she killed her siblings tried to kill her. We've learned about this about Tuon.
Yeah, selling people into slavery, blah blah blah. Lyle clues him into what the horse would have signified to Tuon, that he acknowledges that, she's the greater partner and that he really likes her. And he's like, I acknowledged what now? But like that badger is out of the bag, Matt.
Sorry. Yeah, you gave such a nice gift that you put yourself down, basically.
Yeah. It's kind of like when Rand bows to her. He's like, do you need me to just bend at the waist? Is that all you need? Like, okay, fine. Whatever. It's fine. Like, she needs these weird symbols of being on top, but, like, it really doesn't matter to the actual dynamic that our two Rivers characters are seeing themselves in.
Right. And in a lot of ways, they undercut the power of that.
Exactly.
By just not giving it credence. Just being like, okay, fine. If you want that, that's fine, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
Exactly.
He had acknowledged, what? No wonder a bloody set of dice stopped.
Right. We think a bit about how the Aes Sedai Suldam relationship has been changing because of the education.
Yeah, the first half of this chapter, I blasted right through.
Yeah. And then we talked with Satala a little bit. We get the whole, like, throwing things at him with the power, and then that's clearly Jolene, and then Teslin yells at Jolene, and it stops. But then Teslin won't acknowledge it when he tries to thank her for it. Like, drama, drama, drama. Fun dynamics. Go read the book if you want to read it in full.
It is this dynamic though that Jolene always tests him. Teslin supports him because she understands what he risked when he saved them.
Right.
And she's also the one who put the note in Egwene's pocket, right?
No, it's in Matt's pocket. About Elaine.
For Elaine. That's right.
And then comes the actual fun part, which, we've referenced this a bunch, but it's a fun part where Matt is talking to Satala Anan, and she asks about the medallion, and he's like, you were an Aes Sedai once, weren't you? And she's like, yeah, I don't know why I'm following you, cough Taviran. But here's my entire backstory for everyone who's been wondering what my backstory was. Yes, it's me. Hi, I'm not the problem. I'm just the plot device. It's me.
She very much is Martine Janta, the Aes Sedai into Terangrial who got burned out.
Yeah. And she went away to die decently, and then she got found by a man who likes taking in lost kittens, and got nursed back to health and had a second life. And it's the best outcome given how badly the Aes Sedai handle that kind of situation, is for her to be taken up by a kindly man. And now she's kind of swept up in the Matt Taviran thing, and it's like, I don't know why I care about you succeeding at all of this, but I do, so I'm here to help, and I won't spill your lovesick secret to Tuon, so good luck with that.
And she's totally in the prophecies as the woman who is no longer.
Yeah, that's a Min vision. right?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure. I don't remember because it's very fleeting. But yeah, I mean, she is a very important character on a cosmic level because she brings a lot of information and communication to the plot. She's one of the only people in Robert Jordan's entire world that actually facilitates meaningful communication.
Right.
She's one of the reasons why we don't have more books is because, she actually had people communicate.
I wonder if there's something about having, your gender taken away, the symbol of channeling of her gender taken away from her that puts her a little more in the middle and more understanding of both sides, where she's like, I was on that side, but I have more understanding of this side.
She's ridden through that transition, and it allows her to talk to Tuon while being very much not someone that Tuon would think to take seriously, right? It's kind of like when a transphobe is talking to a trans person who's passing. It's like, totally. Okay, I guess I'm going to educate you on this since you're actually listening to me as though I'm on your team when I'm not. Which, helps with Tuon's potential future outriggers that should have been written.
She looks at the medallion.
Yeah, because, she was the one into Tuon Grial, so even a former channeler, she can still be, curious about the engineering of that, because, she's Elaine. And then we switch topics to the Aes Sedai harassing Tuon because they have learned that she is a Seanchan High Lady, and they keep addressing her as though she could be a messenger to the higher-ups in Seanchan, and she ignores them because they are talking animals.
And that was definitely Luca who let that slip.
Oh, definitely.
Right? Yeah,
definitely.
Matt accuses him. He's like, no, shifty eyes. No, why would I do that? Yeah, he boasted.
Yeah, I see no reason to doubt Matt's read on that situation.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Tuon did not see three Aes Sedai, representatives of the White Tower, perhaps the greatest power on Earth. She saw two escaped Damane and a Marath Damane, and she had no use for either until they were decently collared.
Yeah. That's what we were talking about just a minute ago with lessening her symbols of power by not caring about giving them to her. She's lessening Aes Sedai power by just simply not caring who they are.
They're not people to her.
No. And being ignored to that degree is difficult to push against.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having dinner one night, and I love how Noel is deliberately cockblocking Matt. After all sorts of numbers of meaningful glances, he refuses to leave, and he keeps interjecting comments on Matt's play right as Tuon was about to fall into his trap. And I'm like, Noel is just sitting there playing bad Cupid just because it's funny, and Tuon seems to enjoy having someone to toss it up with Solutia, have someone else in there creating Matt to be creating frustration for Matt.
This also feels like season 3 of a will they won't they comedy where the writers are just trying to find any reason to keep them from getting together because it's been obvious on both sides that they're attracted. And all right, well, we'll just have their friends start fucking with them, and then we'll have them be separated for a while, and then one will have an opportunity in another country, and then they'll come back together, and the other one will have started dating somebody else. And it's okay, I get it. Just hook them up already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We know you're leading to it. But yeah, there's a little bit of that to me with Noel just being no, it's not time yet for them to hook up yet, so I need to delay it a little bit.
Yeah. But it's funny. It's cute.
Mm-hmm. But also Noel is acting as Matt Solutia.
Yes, very much. And Tuon's kind of well, this is fun. He's got an older person getting in his way. This is great. So they're having a fine evening, and then Jolene walks in at the head of an arrow of Aes Sedai and just tries to flex her power and authority, and it just goes so sideways for her. It's all wrong from the get-go, and then it just goes so pear-shaped.
Because Tuon has 3 Adom.
And has been ready for this.
Do we know where she got those? Have we tracked the source of those Adom?
We had 3 Adom when we left. That was part of the disguise to get out. We don't know where they've been being stored ever since the disguises were put away. Somehow she got her hands on them, but I don't know that we've seen them since the escape chapter where they were being used as part of the disguise.
But somehow, yeah, Tuon obviously has them.
Yeah, they were there. They were present in the caravan. So it was simply a matter of her figuring out where they were and then getting, presumably, Selucia to go actually acquire them. But yeah, Selucia is able to very quickly slip the collars onto first Teslin, which then gives Tuon the ability to hold on to the other two real quick while Selucia puts the collars on the other two. Like, it's really quite clever. Like, this is obviously one of the things that Suldam, like, train in and practice in, is how to use one to capture all.
Well, the shock is still there.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. How do you move as quickly as possible to get collars on all of them? This is a thing that they've practiced and worked on before, like, just in Shandar. So Tuon was clearly prepared for something like this to happen and to take advantage.
And also interesting, she's the first time we've seen a Suldam have two collars on at the same time and control two Damane at the same time.
Yeah, she's good at this. She is talented and experienced.
She's good. She's probably a very powerful channeler.
She is probably, like, so powerful. Like, knock the socks off of everyone but Olivia and Nynaeve powerful. Like, could give Egwene a run for her money powerful. Like, yeah. So then we get some interesting lessons, quote unquote. And I love that Tuon says, you see, the Adom can be used to punish, though that is seldom done. And I am like, oh, do your servants actually like you and love you? Are you actually good? Okay. That is seldom done. That is garbage. It's constantly done.
I thought there was an interesting mirror where she brings pleasure to Jolene between, remember the Forsaken, who was torturing the warder and the...
Yeah. Semirog torturing, Cabriana McCandus's warder.
To get the information for...
Halima's disguise, yeah.
And so, yeah, but that's how she kills the warder, right? Is she gives him pleasure.
Yeah, she orgasms him to death.
Yeah, the way the Adom can basically do that. And she does it to Jolene. And the way who else controls pleasure and pain the way Tuon does? Semirog.
Yeah. Who is,
not a great comparison.
Also one of the only canonically dark-skinned people. Awkward. Very awkward.
And who was also her truth speaker for a while.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah. Super awkward. Very discomforting. But yeah, I found Tuon's like, oh, we don't actually punish that often, to just be like, you are so far up your own ass with how good slavery is for people. Like, get out. No,
and I actually do think Lillian's making a good point. I do think the pain is used fairly rarely once they're trained up, right? Very few of the Suldam would ever be at risk of feeling the pain because they don't violate the rules, because they are so well trained.
I am flipping every fucking table. I hate that. I think you're right, but I hate that.
Honestly, like, I do think the pain is rarely used. I don't think it's necessary. And the same thing that, like, people who have shock collars, which I'm against, are like, well, he gets shocked a couple of times and then you put the collar on and you never even have to charge it again because it's so painful, that the dog knows not to ever bark again. And yeah, it really hurt in the beginning, I'm sure, but now
it's just the breaking in phase.
The breaking in phase.
I mean, you're making a good argument, because I'm like, well, when Egwene was captured, it was nothing but screams up and down the hallway, but that was a bunch of local women who had been taken and were getting broken to the collar in a world where the collar wasn't even like a cultural norm that they knew how to fit into. So, like, that's not a fair sample,
right,
of what the average Suldam experience over decades of life is, or average Damane experience over decades of life is. So I guess that's fair, but I still think that it's some weird abuser gaslighty shit. It's really rare unless you make me hurt you. Like, yeah,
totally.
But no, that is a really good point. That is a good point.
I only beat you when you disobey me. That's yeah.
Yeah. So Matt is like, hey, you promised not to hurt my followers, and this would be a pretty big violation. And she's like, well, these three have made it very clear that they're not following you, so it doesn't count. And
I love
I'm like,
that line.
I hate you, but that's a really beautiful, like, retort. Like, I'm here for that level of sass.
Meanwhile, the eyes today, I'd be like, fuck, she's right. We really
they have to obey Matt more now.
Yeah, totally. They're like, if they want his protection, they need to be his follower. And I love that this play really, again, I hate how she's doing it, but I like that it's still kind of supporting Matt.
Yeah, there is a way in which she is turning this into building Matt up, which is
right.
Exactly. I hate how she's doing it, but I do enjoy it nonetheless.
I like how Noel's going for knives, and Matt's like, "Stop it! Don't stab anybody. I'll talk him down."
I know. I love that Noel is like, well, without a doubt, I need to stab me some slavers. Like, I feel like that's where Noel is going. Is like, well, this cannot fucking stand. I guess these women are out. Oops, too bad. Sorry. Like, I want to think that that's where Noel's going, but Matt's like, dude, I have a plot to finish. Shush, don't, no. And Noel, being a good follower, an actual member of the team, takes Matt's lead, even though he disagrees. And Matt thinks this thing that she looks more beautiful than ever while doing this very scary thing and being a dangerous leopard, a leopard who will rake him with her claws. And I'm just like, yes, Matt, the leopards will eat your face. The leopards eating people's faces party, as seductive as it may look, will come to eat you. I love that Robert Jordan used leopards of all things for that particular passage. Also, leopards in the Two Rivers?
It's the same thing with like lions in the Aiel Waste, right? But yeah, leopards aren't those? Those are forest animals, and there's the all sorts of forest around.
Yeah,
the Two Rivers.
Just don't think of the Carolinas as being infested with big cats.
Oh well, you'd be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
There are cats up in the mountains. There are certainly leopards.
Oh. I didn't realize there were leopards in the American Southeast.
I'm pretty sure the Appalachians have leopards.
I mean, mountain lions, yeah, but mountain lions and leopards are not synonyms. Oh, I think leopard, like Central America.
Cougar is probably more of what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's not a leopard. Cougar and mountain lion and all that's not leopard. Leopard is a very specific kind of cat. Yeah, bobcats are not mountain lions. Those are different, mid-sized kitty.
But I'm just saying there are cougars in the mountains, right? There are big cats that live up in the not necessarily.
Yes, I just thought leopard was a very specific cat to bring up that surprised me in the context of all that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like panther, cougar, puma, like there's some of the terms overlap, I think, in terms of.
But leopard isn't one of those terms.
Yes, I know. I'm aware of that now. I was wrong. You corrected me. We're moving on.
Okay.
Yes.
I would also like to point out that Matt has apparently dealt with large cats in the woods as a young teenager, which he never mentioned that before, but I feel like that puts some hair on your chest. Dealing with a large cat in the woods, hunting a large cat. Don't hunt large cats. Those terrifying. That's badass.
There's a reason those woods are unlucky. It's because children who go, there's big cats, and cats eat people. That's
a thing. That's a thing that Matt was doing that was badass before he ever left the Two Rivers, was apparently being able to deal with hunting a large cat in the woods.
Oh, no. I mean, when they talk about their skills in the woods and being quiet and hunting and how they used to wander and how that's actually really valuable when it comes to fighting, that's because they're doing things like avoiding big cats, right? It's not a no-risk proposition to go hunting in those woods. This is the area around the Two Rivers is barely civilized.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah. So yeah, speaking of leopards, back to Tuon.
Right. So there's a line where he says, Light, you can learn to channel yourself. Doesn't knowing that change anything? You're not far different from them. And I feel like finally somebody said it, right? This idea that, you can learn. And then Tuon's rationale, perhaps I could learn, but I choose not to, just as I choose not to steal or commit murder. That makes all the difference. Okay, then you have to stop collaring women the way they do. Because they don't collar women the first time they channel. They collar young women who could channel. Who will learn to channel. They have the spark, right?
Yeah.
But you're not giving them a chance to make the choice.
Also, once you start, you can't stop. It's I was reading this and thinking of really bad arguments against queerness, from the 90s and earlier, you know, like it's a choice, you know, and like it's not though. Like your sexuality and your gender confusion or lack thereof, like are kind of not a choice. How you act on those things is a choice, but how it is in you isn't a choice. It just is what it is. Whereas committing theft and murder are choices. Those are actual choices.
And that's, I believe, the exact argument Jordan is making here. That's the exact argument he's debunking here. Is he saying he's, I believe, making an equivalent and saying it's not a choice. And you don't get to say, oh, even though I could, I choose not to, therefore I'm different. Like, how many times did I hear that argument about these? And it was often closeted homophobic people who would come out and be like, well, I made the choice not to. Therefore.
Yeah, I was able to force myself into the closet. And why should you get to live your life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it turns out 20 years later, when it's become more accepted, you look around and they've just been living, you know, openly as gay for many years because they realized that's what was going on in their life, you know.
Yeah. And it's very often that people that make their entire personality about being a bigot, it's because they're angry that they can't live the life that other people are living. Like that's what that anger is about, is jealousy. And it's like, well, maybe just maybe just live your life.
Right. Yeah.
Join us, you know?
Right.
But yeah, no, I do like that RJ is taking that really stupid fucking argument and putting it into a context where people who may be homophobic will be like, yeah, that's a dumb argument. This is stupid. So like maybe, just maybe, when they hear it in a different context in the real world, they'll be like, wait a second. Wait. It's an annoying argument, but I like that RJ is using it to be like, this is a bad argument.
Yes. And so as Matt goes to free them, Tuon tries to stop him with the power, and she's startled because she sees the weaves melt.
Yeah.
Which makes you go, oh, okay, so she can see the weaves, right? This is someone, she's done a lot of training. She's probably got a lot of potential power. She sees the weaves. She's basically channeling, you know, as the second she snaps on the bracelet and the collar on somebody, she is channeling those weaves against other Aes Sedai. She's not instructing anybody. She's the one doing the channeling.
Right, like when Nynaeve was using Moghedien's power.
Yes.
Exactly like
right.
that. Yeah, no,
right.
it's wild that she doesn't spontaneously start channeling with how much potential she has and how much power she's got and how much experience she has. It's a wonder she doesn't spontaneously start channeling at some point, subconsciously and all that. So he just tells her it's a gift. She's like, how did you do that? He's like, no, you do not get all those secrets. No, I just have magic properties. Fucking deal with it.
What's going on with Selucia here? Where she's like all terrified of Matt and like trying to stop him. And then Tuon says no. And Matt's like, oh, an order made her not fear me anymore. And I'm just like, no, that doesn't make sense. What's actually going on?
Well, remember how you said that Noel is like Matt's Selucia? What was Noel just doing? Preparing to attack and then having to get called off?
That's
Selucia preparing to attack and saying, this is going far too far. I will kill him and deal with the consequences later. And so she is putting on a frightened face because that will disarm Matt long enough for her to get close enough to like bite his jugular or whatever she's going to do to stop this situation. And then Tuon says, absolutely not. I'm fucking betrothed to him. And so she puts the mask off. And that's why the fear melts away instantly.
Got it. Because she's not actually afraid. The fear was a put on as a maiden or as a maid. Yeah.
Right. If she like throws herself at Matt like, oh no, I'm so afraid of what you're gonna do. Oops, I accidentally stabbed you in the aorta.
Right. Oh no. Right. Yeah.
That's gotcha. How I read that.
Okay. I like that interpretation.
Especially because Noel just did it and we're making those parallels. It's like, well, I mean, They each have to make that move, right? If they're going to be parallel. And then we have the great interaction where Tuon says, they've annoyed me. I want them to stop annoying me. And Matt's like, they annoy me too. And I think that after this, they will promise to stop annoying you, right? And they all look at him and they're like, yes, Matt.
Yes, Matt.
And then Jolene is like, I'll do it for Precious. Like just that last little Parthian shot, you know, like for Precious. And Tuon, hisses like a wet cat. And it's just like, yeah, you bitch.
It's very much like the teacher after the school, the two kids fight, and it's like, all right, shake hands. It's over now. No more fighting.
I do like that Matt pretends to threaten to leave Jolene in the collar because she's so annoying, and then doesn't, because he will threaten it, but he is aware of the human rights violation that's happening and only lets it hang for like 2 seconds before releasing her. So it's fine.
One of my favorite ways that Jordan shows us how clever Matt is that he figures out how to open up the collar. He sits with it for like a couple of minutes or like an hour or something and figures out.
I think it says an hour. Yeah.
And so he figures out how to open it up, and like there's Aes Sedai, and I think even like Elaine and Nynaeve spend longer with it trying to figure out how to open it up.
Well, I think that when you're wearing it, you can't touch it with the intention of opening it. But even, the women who can channel, who are trying to figure it out from the outside, I think it's because they're too focused on trying to figure out a power way to open it. I think they're just not blacksmith puzzle oriented enough, you know?
I think it was also just, Matt's clever and good with his hands. And so he found those divots or spots probably pretty easily, and
Well, he's the one who's taking clocks apart as a child, right? Like, Elaine's the only other one who might figure it out, but I think she's far too focused on a magical solution to, like, slow down enough to just fiddle with it in her lap for an hour while she stares at the fire, you know?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think Matt would be better at the blacksmith's puzzles than Perrin.
You'd think. It's just that only Perrin has the personality inclination towards it. Matt doesn't see the point of solving those little puzzles,
right.
But he could really easily.
Right.
He's like the what? Like it's hard gift, you know?
He'd drop it and it would fall apart.
Right. Yeah, totally.
He'd be like, and Baron be like, those are supposed to be hard to take apart. And he's like, I don't know. Every time I drop them, they go to pieces. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then to close out the chapter, Matt buries the Adom, so that way we won't have any sort of awkward resurgence of that particular plot point.
Oh, there's a line here where Jolene says, even if I would bond you against your will, I couldn't so long as you have that ter'angreal. And I'm, of course, immediately taken back to Alana.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because Jolene says, oh, you want to be my warder? Oh, well, I can't with a thing. And yeah, man, if Rand had this, that could have changed a lot, potentially for the worse, because we've talked about maybe dying.
Well, and Matt having it is one of the reasons I think that Alana, because she wanted to bond one of the three, and she was told off Perrin because of Fael, right? And I think she would have bonded Matt. I think there's even a line where she's like, oh, Matt wasn't an option because of the ter'angreal.
Really? You think she actually tried? When he was...
I think she wanted to, yeah. I think she eliminated him from... I mean, not like tried, but I think she like eliminated him from contention as one of the three.
Because of the medallion?
Because of the medallion.
I didn't pick up on that. But I could believe it, because he got it a long time ago. He's had a lot of interactions with Aes Sedai since. I could believe that, but I don't recall it.
Let me do a little research here before we end this chapter. All right, so in Lord of Chaos, Alana intends to bond Perrin, but Fael threatens her.
Like with Super Sky, like saying that Idom has a childproof lock on it. I like that way of imagining it. It's just a childproof lock. You gotta push and twist, and it's a little bit counterintuitive.
Yeah. So, okay, maybe I'm just headcanoning that whole thing with Matt, because she wants to bind, because she helps heal Matt, right? And that's before he gets medallion, doesn't bond him. Then she tries to tries to bond Perrin, and Fael tells her off. And then very shortly thereafter, she bonds Rand at the first opportunity.
Yeah, she doesn't get another chance at Matt. So
yeah, I'm wondering how much. Yeah, in my head, it's just like, oh, she wouldn't even try it at that point because he has the medallion from after.
Yeah, I don't think she knows about it, so it's moot.
No, yeah, good point. Well, Jordan at least didn't.
For sure,
knew about it.
For sure. Yeah, so you want to read us out?
He spent part of the night doing what he liked least in the world, working. Digging a deep hole to bury the three Adom. He did the job himself because, surprisingly, Jolene wanted them. They were ter'angreal after all, and the White Tower needed to study them. That might well have been so, but the tower would just have to find their Adom elsewhere. He was fairly certain that none of the Red Arms would have handed them over if he told them to bury the things, yet he was taking no chances that they would reappear to cause more trouble. It started raining before the hole was knee-deep. a cold, driving rain, and by the time he was done, he was soaked to the skin and mud to the waist. A fine end to the night with the dice bouncing around in his skull. So, it's either the last day of winter or the first day of spring, depending on which of your podcast hosts you ask.
Yeah, so congratulations to everyone. We've made it to equinox, whichever hemisphere you're in. We're transitioning from the season that we're tired of to the season that we're excited about. But the question is, does 11:58 p.m. today count as today, or is that the middle of the goddamn night and it just counts as tomorrow? I say that today is the last day of winter because tomorrow we wake up and it is spring, because it is at literally the 11th hour, the last possible minute that equinox happens. So I don't give a fuck that it's technically 2 minutes early. I just don't.
I'm just saying, if you were born 2 minutes before midnight, your birthday is still the day on which you were born. That's still the first day of your life, even if it's only 2 minutes long. And so today is the first day in which spring exists. Today is the first day of spring, not the last. It is also the last day of winter. It can be both. The best response is a frustrated grunt because it means you have nothing to say.
I just don't like it.
You are allowed to headcanon that it is not, but yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a difference between the artistic interpretation and the scientific reality on this one. Either way, it's a major tonal shift, and everyone around here anyway, everyone in this neck of the woods is very, very happy. We are all very happy to see the sun back. The sun, we have missed you. This is great.
The temperature has gone from the 40s and 50s to the 60s and 70s. It's gone from cloudy and rainy to blue skies and sunny, and it's hard not to feel a lot better about pretty much everything in your life when the sun's out like this. Yeah.
It's like, I don't like to go outside that much because I burn so easy and bugs really piss me off. But also, like, there's land work to do, and we're in that really like narrow pocket when the blackberries haven't grown that much and the birds haven't actually made their nests in all the underbrush. So it's like nice, and we can get out and do stuff. And even though I don't like going outside, I have to begrudgingly acknowledge, like, it does make me feel better. It really does. Like, it's great. We got starts in the ground.
Nice.
You know, like leafy greens. I got a little bit of I tried to prune my apple trees, like, because they've got suckers coming off of them, and then I was like, oh, I have all these suckers. And then I watched a video that was like, here's a really easy way to like turn apple suckers into a cool basket. And I was like, that looks super doable. And like, there is no basket. There's only a bunch of shredded branches that I had to throw into the outdoor fire pit. I tried. It was not as easy as the video made it out to be.
So what you're saying, the basket weaving class I took in college was not wasted.
Yep. Yep. Because self-teaching yourself off the internet is frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that with crochet. I'm definitely come a long way, but I've made some very simple mistakes that I think if someone was around to teach me, I wouldn't have made, right? Like, just in terms of, like, getting my edges regular and some tensioning and just there's a few other things that I've had to figure out. It just took a lot of trial and error that, like, if you're being taught, you can avoid because someone can be like, oh, you're doing that wrong, instead of you figuring it out, 3 attempts later.
Yeah, no, precisely. I learned how to crochet and knit in Waldorf, like in elementary school. Did I ever perfect things like getting edges right? No, not at all. Could I do it now? No, I can barely remember how to knit, much less purl at this point. Like, I can do it, like the muscle memory does come back, but like, yeah, when that's just what school is learning how to crochet and attempt to make the edges even. Yeah, it's a little bit less frustrating, I think. I mean, it's more frustrating because you're a kid and you have like no fucking motor control, and your hand-eye coordination is shit, and that's why they have crochet as your school lesson. But yeah,
I tell you, it's been a hand strengthening exercise for me to crochet, right? Like, I definitely feel
that
like
fine motor control.
Motor control. I mean, I do a lot of crawling under machines and getting my hand into weird areas to turn a screw, and having some extra hand strength has definitely benefited me in my job, because I'm doing a lot of like, let me reach between these two thin metal pipes and screw in this bolt with just the very tips of my fingers, because that's all I can touch it with. And that takes a little bit of hand strength to hold your hand in place and move that kind of stuff. So I'm also having the same problem. So I'm doing a lot more of like, I'm lifting things that, 10, 15, 20, 25, 40 pounds sometimes. And not all the time, but I'm finding that like my work is, I used to have big shoulders from swimming, and then I started biking and my shoulders kind of went away, and now they're back, and none of my shirts fucking fit anymore. It's really frustrating. All my button shirts, I have a whole closet full of shirts that I can't button across my chest anymore.
And I have to deal with like acquiring new clothes, and that's like both money and time and change.
Yeah.
Which is just, ugh. Yeah. Yeah, I hate it.
Jobs affect your body types if they're a physical job, for sure.
Or if they're not.
Or if they're not. Yeah, definitely.
Losing a job at the library where I was doing tons of walking and lifting and going, up and down stairs and like all kinds of, so many steps up and down those little steps just to get to the top of the shelf because I'm short. Like, it was, plus walking to and from school, like I was in much better shape than I am now because I don't have like that
built-in exercise. Yeah.
Like, that job was great. So losing it.
Hunter-gatherers never had to exercise. They didn't know what that was. They just lived their lives. Do you want, speaking of living our lives, this terrible transition. Do you want to talk about the Wheel of Time?
Sure.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?